Good morning. My name is Sara Gorham. I am a licensed spiritual practitioner here at Light on the Mountains, and I am so happy always to look out and see all your beautiful shining faces. For as the song said, truly there is a light that fills all of us. And so, knowing that, I invite us all to take a moment to take a deep breath, settle in, and know the truth of that statement, that there is a light that fills each heart, each person here, with that divine light. It is a reflection and expression of that universal light, that love, that peace, that expanded creation and expression that is the divine. And we know that divine as always present, as expressing through and as all we can comprehend and know. And that is the light that animates each and every one of us, that draws us one to each other in recognition of our common source. And so I know that for all of us today, I know that we join here in fellowship as a natural outpicturing of our unity. And I give thanks for all those who give of themselves to make this spiritual center hum all week long. And for those of you who've shown up today in this room on live stream, those who gather later in the week to share this celebration. I give thanks for all of this, and I invite us to say, and so it is. So, the 3 P's: passion, purpose, and potential. Have you noticed this is our theme for the month of August, and so I had some thoughts on that. When considering the 3 P's of passion, purpose, and potential, our theme for the month of August, as good Americans, I think we might be inclined to focus on the middle word, purpose. Purpose is a doing word, and we are a nation of doers, often identifying ourselves and others first and foremost by our occupation, which we tend to assume is the same as our purpose. Have you ever noticed that in our culture, the question, "And what do you do?" is the most common icebreaker question posed in friendly encounters with someone new, the assumption being that what you do is somehow who you are. And while I've certainly asked that question many times myself, I have long felt that it is not so much what we do with our days that matter, but what we bring to what we do. What aspect of us expresses through us in whatever we might pursue. In other words, what really matters is not what we do, but how we do it. Let's remember that Florence Nightingale and Nurse Ratched were both nurses. Though clearly... though clearly very differently expressed in their purpose. When my daughter was in high school, she was lucky enough to go to a very cool little school in Vermont called the Putney School, where the curriculum for all students included academic classes, physical work to support the function of the school, and art for everyone. So of course everyone went to class, everyone scrubbed pots in the kitchen or worked in the garden, but 2 nights a week, everyone dove into the art exploration of their choice. No grades, just the joy of discovery. Delving into everything from weaving to printmaking, metal sculpture to madrigal singing, dance to drawing to drumming. The idea in that free exploration was to cultivate the inherent creative nature that dwells within us all. Because as the school's founder believed, whatever each student went on to pursue in his or her life, that pursuit would be enhanced by the student's ready access to their creative nature. Their purpose would be supercharged by their creative intelligence, making them more inspired scientists, educators, artists, inventors, and parents. My question is, what if we took that same idea of cultivating an inner force that animates us and all we do, but instead of specifically attending solely to our creativity, which is certainly an aspect of our divine nature, What if we expanded that to the cultivation of the awareness of the divine generally, both within ourselves and in all that we encounter? What if we each chose a practice that reminded us daily that there isn't God and something else? Just as having ready access to one's personal creativity can't help but make someone a more inspired chef or a more innovative rocket scientist, so the cultivation of our awareness of the sacred nature of life cannot help but make us better at being divinely human, whatever purpose we might choose to pursue. In doing so, we become more attentive friends, wiser parents, more appreciative partners, and more compassionate citizens of the world, supercharging not just our purpose, but our passion and our potential as well, with nothing less than the light and the love of the divine. So, yeah, thank you. And now, with that in mind, we get to say our affirmation for August. It's on our insert. In red, together we say, I am an individuated creation of the divine who embraces life with great passion, purpose, and an understanding of its unlimited potential. And now, speaking of creativity, there's more music.
Thanks, Sarah. I had no idea that your daughter went to Putney. Good morning, everyone. A thought of the day, and now I have to weave that into the thought. So 30 or more years ago, I ended up touring that school. Not for me. That would have been more like, I don't know, 50 years ago or more. Way, way back, many centuries ago. But I went with my forever friend who was looking for a school for her son. He ended up going there. But at the time, and I don't know if this continued on, the entire school gathered on Fridays to sing. Not for a choir, just to sing. Because the founders thought it was a good idea to do communal-based things, and what could be more communal than singing together? Good for the soul, good for camaraderie, good for the sense of community, and I was blown away by that. So, Max and I and many of the rest of you have been a little consumed with music over the last week, and that will go on for a few more weeks as the Sun Valley Music Festival is in the midst of its season. I've been blown away by magnificent music, and it brought me back to this quote: music happens in the space between the notes. Have you heard that before? Do you know who it's attributed to? Many people would say Miles Davis. And indeed, he did say that. But indeed, the quote itself comes from Claude Debussy, this man who wrote this. There's no space between those notes. My fingers know that. There's not a bit of space there. And yet, I realize as I've been inspired by music, challenged by music, entertained, charmed, guided, that I find that what I am maybe craving in other parts of my days is that quiet, that silence between, that time to process, that time to remember, to reflect on, to notice me. Not to avoid me, but to see how the sounds of the day have influenced me. And often I find great things. I find things that I'm delighted by. And sometimes I find things that maybe I don't like so much. But in the time between the notes, there's time to look at that too. Come to terms with that. Maybe, after a few of those silences, to make some peace with some of those things, to look at them from a different perspective. And so I encourage us all to continue to wallow in the creativity, to enjoy the inspiration, and to notice the space between the notes.
Thank you, R.L. Thank you, Max. Good morning, everyone who's here. Good morning, everyone at home. Thank you for joining us, regardless of how you happen to come here today. So I'm having to resist this alternate talk that's been forming in my head that's now about Florence Nightingale and Nurse Ratched. And I'm really, you know how, like you say, I don't want to listen to that voice in my head? And I am resisting it, but there's something in there. And I don't know whether to thank or curse you right now, Sarah. So, but we'll stay tuned next week. There might be an unexpected discussion about passion in those two.
Maybe it's October's theme.
Maybe. It's time will come, as they say. I watched an interesting little video this week about a man talking about how he and those that he was working with were seeking to change their work culture. And I got the impression that it was this kind of, corporate kind of thing. I don't know if you've ever done corporate kind of things before. I did it once for about 2.5 years, and I did feel like I was in the twilight zone a little bit. I've always been in things where I had more control of my day, and I might work harder than some people, but it was like I was in control of it, if there's such a thing as control. But I really appreciated what this man said, because what he said is relatable and can be realized in your life regardless if you're working or not. But he said that as this corporate, see, there's a whole nother talk in there. I got to stay focused here. He said that in the corporate world, it is pretty much the tendency to be very goal-orientated. That we have jobs and projects, and of course, if this big old business, not only a big old business, but any business, ultimately, you want to make money, don't you? There's nothing wrong with making a profit. That's why when you go to pay your mortgage, if you have one, it's really nice that the money's there, isn't it? I always found that to be true. So we want to, in a sense, have more money coming in than going out. But he said that his experience in the corporate world of just setting goals, that it was very, sterile in a sense. That, okay, so you went to work and you had these 3 goals for the day and 2 for the week, and that's nice that you made it, but maybe there's a different way to look at it. And so the way that he said his company started trying to shift the way that people thought about their time at work, and you spend a great deal of time at work if you work a 9 to 5-ish kind of job in a building somewhere downtown somewhere. And he said they wanted to change it from goal-orientated to asking yourself, and whatever you did, even very small tasks, is what impact were you making in the world today? And you think, well, God, if I'm at a computer doing data entry, what does that even mean? And of course, first of all, it seems like, and here's what I found as Americans, we think big, don't we? It's like we instantly go to the big thing. And impact, well, are we going to be philanthropists and fund something here in the world? So, well, we may do that, certainly, but you start at home first in your own environment. I've certainly have found that in spiritual community, talking about how do we make an impact, and like what can we do here? And someone will say, well, shouldn't we be solving world hunger? So, well, yes, but maybe there's someone hungry down the street that we need to attend to first. That we always, as Americans, we go to the big thing. How can we solve the thing when it's like, oh, somebody has food insecurity down the block. Maybe we should connect them with the Hunger Coalition and do some volunteering. So we have that tendency to just blow it up to something big. But he said that looking at impact in the corporate, God, I can't get away from that corporate world. Again, there's got to be talk in there somewhere. So he said, let's say you had committed to finishing a report at Wednesday by noon, and it had to be then passed over to another team to do whatever they're doing. And let's say that you are late by 2 hours. Well, the impact is that there may be 2 or 3 people that have to work later that day that really needed to not work later that day. And that by getting it on time, and of course things happen, that you were honoring not only your commitment, but honoring the people who had to have it passed on to them. And that so you were doing, in many ways, an act of respect by honoring their position as well as your commitment. And so he was just saying that anything you do, what is the personal impact that it has? And it's so easy in this larger business structure to not look at a micro impact that it has. And haven't we all had the experiences where the thing was late and maybe someone got something to us late, or whatever, or the person's going to fix your washer and dryer was 3 hours late, and then you had your whole day went, what I mean? It's just, what is the impact we have in the simplest of things? And to think of it on a human level. And he went further to say that what is the impact, especially if you're in management in business, of treating people with honor and respect as opposed to not treating them with honor and respect. What is that kind of where it expands and it expands and expands and creates a different experience for everyone, where they don't dread going to their jobs, where they actually appreciate going to their jobs. So as we're talking this month about passion and purpose, again, we often as Americans go to the big thing. I am internationally renowned for my passion and purpose, when it's often a little less showy. In fact, I think we've talked ourselves into believing that it has to be big and showy and internationally impactful, or it somehow doesn't have worth. And, are any of us in this room internationally recognized for anything? I mean, not to put us down, but honestly, I don't think we are. I'm not known for my whatever internationally. I mean, you may stumble across my blog or a live stream, but that's kind of it. That's as international as I get. But there's always that thing with us in our culture that it has to be that next big thing. Even in the work that I do, there are some centers and spiritual communities that literally have thousands and thousands of members. And I remember the first couple of years in this that someone said, "Don't you want to be just like Michael Beckwith?" For those who don't know, he's this huge, go on YouTube. You could spend all day on YouTube and see, and he's wonderful. And he was one of my teachers in the School of Ministry. And somehow that what I was doing was not big enough. Like, don't you want to graduate and be him? And I knew what his schedule was like, and I was like, no, I really, really don't. I kind of like being here in a small town. I like hanging out at Starbucks. Like I told you, one of my favorite things that I try once a week to go to Starbucks and just hang out. It's amazing that I'm actually at work, because I have conversations that I would normally not have if I was hanging out in my office. So I prefer that version of ministry rather than what you see as, internationally acclaimed sort of thing. But I think, in a sense, realizing, quote unquote, a purpose and a passion, that it's a bit quieter, it's actually a bit sweeter. Much like, instead of saying, what big thing do I want to accomplish in the world, again, well, what is my day-to-day impact? Can you, in a sense, find passion in showing up in respect and honoring of everyone that you meet? I would think that would be quite impactful. And if you made that a focus of your life, a form of passion and purpose. Again, as Sarah said, we often have to put a label on it as our, quote unquote, our jobs, so to speak. And I see people not all the time, but getting messed up in that idea. Well, if I have this other job here, I would certainly be more impactful. Or if I move to this other city here, I would certainly be more impactful. And I've seen people go from careers to careers just out of this confusion, like, I really thought it would be here. So I had several years ago, decades ago now, I had a very good friend, and she had a little sibling rivalry going. And her opinion was, it would never be my opinion or judgment, is that her sister was a bit scattered and kept trying to find meaning and purpose in a new career like every 3 months, and was always sure this would be it. And so here was our snarky joke behind her sister's back. So at this time in Los Angeles, of course, as in here, there were these local TV advertisements, like here, like we'll have like the insurance guy from Twin Falls. Hi. Come here for insurance, and they're kind of funny and fun. So at this time in Los Angeles and one of the local stations, there was this guy who owned a company to train you how to be a truck driver. It was Wally School of Trucking. So my friend kept saying, one of these days Jean's going to call me up and announce that she's going to Wally School of Trucking because she has run out of things to do. And so, but we kind of have done that. It's like, well, I didn't find it here, so maybe I'll find it there. So when we're looking for purpose and passion, you start from where you are. And not to say that it can't be big and renowned, but you start from the energy from where you are. And yes, we are, in a sense, goal-oriented. And yes, we do set intentions, but don't lose sight of what it really is that you can do. Also remember years ago, I had a client, decades again, she, about 70 or so, spring chicken in this community. But, she'd been a stay-at-home mom and raised kids and all that. And she says, I wish I could just call myself up from about 50 years ago and give her a good talk. She says, every day I would, of course she was a stay-at-home mom. Her husband would come home, look at the list of things I accomplished. And she says, well, it wasn't as important that the sweeping got done. I should have been there for my kids a little bit more. And don't we all, and not to feel guilty about that, but again, the impact. And so maybe she was passionate about being a parent, but it wasn't so much about doing the laundry, but actually being there as the parent. So we should all look at that a little bit. It's not, yes, we do things in the physical world, but how can we be present now? And maybe even take the word passion and purpose out of it a little bit. I find that a little intimidating sometimes. People just assume, of course, I'm a minister, isn't that big? Capital M, I'm a minister, I'm a clergy person. People say, you're so lucky to have a job that has so much purpose. And I tell them is that, boy, this is a job you can really mess up. And I do feel connected to what I do, and I have admitted this, and I have said this many times, and there are days I have the airport fantasy. Does everyone remember what the airport fantasy is? You go to the airport and get on the first plane out of here. And then the second part of this fantasy is that they always go to Salt Lake, and that's not the completion of my fantasy. Nothing against Salt Lake, but like when I lived in Los Angeles, you could go to the airport and go anywhere, and that would be a real get on the first plane fantasy. But here, what? I get to go to In-N-Out Burger? Is that all? Is that the fruition of my fantasy here of the first plane out of the airport? Go get it animal style or whatever they do there on the private menu. So that's not really what it is. So the thing is, to me, purpose and passion is a sense of connection, even though some days you're not there. Some days it is Nurse Ratched and not Florence Nightingale. You just have one of those days, but you regroup. So as I was looking at this, so let's put that aside. A purpose and a greater connection in life is there for you, even if you don't think it is at the moment. It really is. It sneaks up on you. So there's three kind of phrases here I was looking at today. How can we challenge ourselves to be more present now? And it's not that we don't set goals and not to say that we don't plan ahead, but there has to be this kind of balance where it's not all about the goals, that you're kind of in the moment. So there's three things to look at. Divine right guidance, divine right moment, and divine right action. What in the world does that mean? Here's one thing that I really have tried to do in this job. So when I stumbled into a New Thought Center 1,000,000 years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth, there would be these phrases that would be put out from people like me that I found weird, confusing, and like, do I really want to be here because I don't know what they mean? And I try to not throw those phrases out. But this phrase of divine right, whatever, were one of those phrases. And some of you might today are like, what does that mean? So this is where I went. Well, I had been a spiritual freelancer for a while, but I grew up Catholic, very Catholic, altar boy Catholic. So I had all that verbiage in my brain. So I'm thinking, what could they possibly mean about that? Divine, that to me meant, okay, that's a God sort of thing. I'm not sure what they think about the God sort of thing, but I knew what I thought about the God sort of thing. And I'm not really sure where they're going with this. And then say divine right, and of course, right meaning correct in my mind. So I'm thinking, are they going back to that old God has the right thing for you, and if you don't do it, watch out kind of thing? So I'm like, this is where I'm going with this. So I don't want anyone to go with any of these things, that kind of direction. So what this means is divine, whatever form of God you think. I think of it as a presence that exists at the cellular level. If you want to think it of a happy guy with a beard on a cloud somewhere, great. There's nothing wrong. Do whatever you want. To me, it is just that intelligence that exists within all things. And right, I don't think of it in this term as being correct. I think of it of being right here. So, the power and presence of Spirit right here. It can't not be right here. That as humans, we're not evoking or bringing it here. We are getting out of our way to realize that it's here already. And this even feeds in this whole idea to have great passion, I have to move to somewhere else, when actually the divine is right here already. So that's where you start. You don't have to get onto the plane to go anywhere to find it. It's right here. And our life lesson is to figure that out, because we always assume it's over there and not here. If I'm uncomfortable here, it can't be here. So it must be there. So our spiritual path is to start with, this is kind of a sucky place, but it's here. And then, oh, that's a terrible insight to have, isn't it? I thought I could run away from this. But as frustrated as I am, it's actually here. So we start with divine right guidance. So I don't know about you, but there's a good portion of my life that I feel pretty clueless. I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call. I don't know what book to read. But the divine right guidance, meaning the guidance is right here already, and that it is available. It may not show up as a printed piece of paper, but it is available nonetheless. That if I can't find the guidance where I'm standing here, I'm not going to find it over there. That's the big lesson. So as I make my weekly prayer requests in our ministry of prayer, and we do this every week, and it's available to you all, prayer request box in there, you can do it online. I don't, in a sense, ask for things. The thing that I always affirm is to help me see the guidance that is already there. So it's not a matter of receiving guidance or insight. It's a matter of pulling back the curtain and seeing that it's there already. Sometimes we don't like what that guidance leads us to do, so we go, must be over there, because I didn't like this. I peeked behind the curtain, I didn't like that, so I'm going to go over there. I'm going to spend lots of money to go over there. I'm going to change jobs. I'm going to change relationships because I'm going to go over there when it's actually here. So that's where you start. Divine right guidance. The guidance is right where you are. It shows up in its own time. So you can't say, tomorrow I'm going to wake up with the realization that guidance is right here, and here I am, tell me what to do. It may not. It will show up when you need it most. And we hate that as humans, don't we? Because I want an on-demand guidance system here. I want it to be like AirTags. You know what the AirTags are? GPS thing. I want to know right now. I want to look in my app and it says it's right there. It's not the way it works. Part of the process of learning the belief that it is right here is sometimes it does not show up on your human consciousness time. As I say, it's God's time, not my time. But I have found when you are willing to relax with it, it shows up at the, as they say, the darndest times. It just has a way of showing up. And it doesn't necessarily show up printed. It shows up, for me at least, in a sense of clarity. And here's how I know usually that it's real guidance. there is a sense of calm and peace, and there is also a sense that I don't want to do it. Because I want to do what I want to do. And usually guidance is challenging me and pushing all of us to stretch a little bit. So look for it. Are you kind of calm and like, oh gosh, I didn't want to do that? Then it's probably real guidance. Probably is. There's usually a nice mixture of the two. So let's take this again to divine right moment, in a sense. The power and presence of Spirit is in this moment right now. Basically what this just says, even though we're waiting on guidance or any number of things in our life, is that you cannot have a moment where the power and presence of Spirit is not. We have talked ourselves into believing that. We all have occurrences that happen all the time that we may think that it's not, that whatever this thing that we call God is or Spirit went on vacation. It did not. And part of the way of getting back on track is to realize that even in my most uncomfortable moment, this is a moment where, in a sense, divine right moment. You can't not have one at all times. You can convince yourself that you're not having one anytime you want. And we're pretty good at that, aren't we? We're really good at convincing ourselves that any particular moment is not a divine right moment, meaning the power and presence of Spirit is right here, or as my favorite quote from Mother Teresa, in its most terrible form, or most convincing disguise. So we have lots of convincing disguises where we think Spirit or the divine is not here. Turn on the news. You'll see plenty of convincing disguises, plenty to look at. But the way that we grow as spiritual human beings is to know, in spite of the conditions and things that we do really have to work out here, that it can't not ever be a divine right moment. And the way through and healing is to come to that understanding, that you become a different level of consciousness and vibration to know that it's here, even though many people have declared that it's not. That's how you heal. You declare that the divine is here, even though there's mayhem going on in the world. That's how we grow in consciousness. That's how we come in a group consciousness to say that something else is available. We're having a divine right moment, regardless of what we see. And that brings us to divine right action. Of course, as human beings, we're always about action, don't we? We think, got to get up today and go do some things. There's nothing wrong with that, but we, in this guidance, moment, and action, we have a way of like turning it over. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to go right out and do stuff. Makes you feel good in the sense that you're busy, but haven't you just been exhausted? Like sometimes I'll say, I'm not really sure what I do in this job, but I just know it takes me all day. You know, you ever get that feeling? It's like, I can't tell you what I did today. I just know that it took me all day to do it. So sometimes that is, we put action first without, go for a little guidance, declare the power and presence of Spirit right here, and out of that I'll take my action. It's like, who has time to do that? Let's just go out and do stuff. As I tell people in my classes, your spiritual practice is the best time management tool you could ever do. Because you're not running out like a crazy person there just trying to do stuff for the sake of doing stuff. You take a moment to say, I need to open up to something greater. I need to recognize the power and Spirit of God right where I am. And from there, I will be inspired to take action or not yet. That's the part that kills us as Americans. We're real action-oriented. Sometimes the answer is just put it on hold. It's kind of like, you all know Will the Wonder Dog. He's in my office. He's a chocolate lab. He's 2.5 years old, and he loves life. Tell him to sit and see how long that's going to work. We're like Will the Wonder Dog. Yes, I'm going to have a quiet moment of repose and wait to be guided. We all do it. Before we know it, we're on the phone to everyone. What are you doing today? What do you want to do? Want to meet for here? Let's go over here. Let's do this. Did you hear about such and such? You know, well, we have to do something about that, don't we? That's what we do. Not to say again that we shouldn't take action, but just be with it for a bit first. And to know that everything you do has an impact one way or another. You have had an impact on the world that you can't even imagine. Things that you take for granted. Things that you think, well, wouldn't everybody do that? The answer to that is no. So I came across something this week. I've come across this millions of times. I don't know who wrote it. I'm going to close with this. It's called Note to Self. And this is, what is my purpose in life? I asked the void, and this is the void giving a response. Haven't you ever wanted prayer to be like this? Oh, and you're going to answer me in ways that I understand and would like to hear. Never works like that. If it does for you, let me know. Anyways, what is my purpose in life? I asked the void. What if I told you that you fulfilled it when you took an extra hour to talk to that kid about his life, said the voice. Or when you paid for that young couple in the restaurant. Or when you saved that dog in traffic. Or when you tied your father's shoes for him. Your problem is that you equate your purpose with goal-based achievement. The universe isn't interested in your achievements, just your heart. When you choose to act out of kindness, compassion, and love, you are already aligned with your true purpose. No need to look any further. So let's just take that in for a moment. Let us give thanks for our lives exactly the way they are today. Let's be grateful for all the opportunities of learning. Let us be grateful that divine right guidance is available right here in this moment today. Let us realize and be thankful for that we always live in a divine right moment, which leads to the next divine right moment, meaning the power and presence of Spirit is always right where we are. And let us also give thanks that out of this realization that we are guided to right action. We are guided by impact. We are guided by what is right for the greater good, as well as ourselves. And we relax in that. We release the anxiety around thinking that somehow we could do it incorrectly. We're grounded in this moment, amazed by the impact that the simplest of acts makes in the world. And we give thanks for that. And so in this Thanksgiving, we simply take this idea of truth and we release it, meaning we release our attachment to it. We release our attachment to how it shows up. We allow it just to be in its perfection and its perfect form at any given time. And as we let it go, we just let it be. And so it is.